I'd like to read you the text I got last night from Phil Hayne, because I think this will put into context the session I'm just about to do. Let me read this to you. I was enjoying a lovely glass of red wine at the time with my youngest daughter, and in came the following text from Phil. Let me just find it. Tobin, last minute speaker dropout. Can you wing it for 15 minutes? Yes, is the answer to that. I believe the original topic to be spoke on here was pension dashboard, the whole concept of pension dashboard. I am going to speak about that briefly, but it's not going to end there. I want to talk about pension dashboard as a concept and to pick up on some of the themes that were just coming through then around data and the proliferation of data and pulling data together and creating tech solutions that are aimed to help us make better decisions in life. Let's just start with pension dashboard, though. Everybody aware of the government pension dashboard? Can I show of hands of those that are aware of it? It's one of those great things that came up during the election, which was let's create a single point of contact for a person to get all of their pension data at one time. It's one of those brilliantly easy things to say and actually an entirely complicated thing to be able to do. At the moment, it's been driven by the Association of British Insurers. God knows how we came to the conclusion that that would help build a pension dashboard, but that's where we are. Anticipated delivery is 2019, and consultation is underway at the moment. I was fortunate enough to go across to the Houses of Parliament and sit in a discussion group with government as this first came out. And they said, we'd like to show you our thinking so far, and 2 A4 PowerPoint slides came out onto the table. And I know that sounds slightly dismissive of this project, and perhaps it is, because actually what I don't think is that this project will deliver on its aims. I don't think it can deliver on its aims. Because if you start thinking about what it's actually attempting to do, it's making an assertion that pension, or actually retirement, is just about pension. And that's a really bad conclusion to come to, because actually as we start thinking about it, retirement for all of us is much wider than that. It's at work, it's out of work, it's pension, it's property, it's investments, it's any number of things along the way. Equally, getting data from all of the institutional providers at the moment into a single platform is an incredibly difficult thing to do. There are no industry standards at all. So that complicates itself further in the sense that no one can call what the industry standard should be. So we start with concepts like API and XML, and we even go back to things like Origo standards. There is no consistency yet on this. And the point that I'm making is that a very simple project like this is going to become overtly complicated and will in the end fail. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because in the background of a pension dashboard being created, the rules around pension and savings are changing all the time. So last year there was a reduction in annual allowance and there was a reduction in lifetime allowance. So it gets to the point where, as employers, you're saying to your employees, well, you might breach annual allowance, so you're going to have to invest into something else. That won't be in the pension dashboard. And you're left with a conundrum as an employer, which is, well, should I use the pension dashboard, or should I build something else myself, which is broader and wider? And I guess that's the theme of what I wanted to talk about, which is, in the end, and I think we were just starting to touch on it in the last session, we come up with a concept, which I was very fortunate to be in an office in New York with a whole lot of people that think about technology a lot, often wear flat caps. And we came up with a concept called personal economy, which broadly means for you, in terms of everything that you would want to see for you personally, that would allow you to make decisions about your life from a financial point of view, what would be in it? What would be in your personal economy? If you were to design this piece of software yourself, what would be in it? What we do know, it's not just a pension. And we're left with this, tech people call this stuff an ecosystem. So what that basically means is we're going to end up where our employees, us as consumers, are logging into multiple platforms to try and draw our personal economy together and then try and make sense of it. And it gets more complicated the deeper that we get into it. Because by definition, we're now into banks, credit cards, investment, health potentially, debt, property valuation, investment valuations. It's a really complicated thing to do. I had a go on the train at scribbling what would be in mine. I ran out of space. So For me, all the things that I would want to see in it, there's some broader things in there as well. I'd like to see be able to get access to my will, make sure that's up to date. That's really important to me as part of my personal economy. I have power of attorney of some of my relatives, which is quite a scary thing. I'd like to be able to see that. I'd like to be able to see what's happening for my family, not just for me. That's part of my personal economy. My family are part of my personal economy. I want to be able to see the whole thing. So it's bloody complicated. But what I wanted to do for a moment is for everyone to just take a moment to try and consider what would be in their personal economy. And then I'd like to try and drive it forward slightly. Because what we do know is somewhere, somehow, a single entity is going to need to try and draw all of this together. Who's that? Is it government? Is it employer? Is it a private business? I don't know the answer to it. But it's going to need to happen if we're going to try and get to the aims that we're talking about at the moment. Some people have had a go. I used to work for Aon. Aon had a go. This is something called Big Blue. It made a great step in trying to drive that concept forward. But even then, it's not enough. Because actually, the time and effort it took to build this and the amount of third parties that were involved in building it means that the charge to an employer to use it is disproportionately expensive, let alone a government providing it for everybody at zero cost. Let's just consider, though, that we did manage to do it. And let me, if I may, just fire a telescope into the future and see where this is going to go next. Because although we're debating the ability to transfer data around sort of financial institutions and others at the moment, the problem is about to get exponentially bigger. Who in here is aware of the Internet of Things? Anyone prepared to have a go at explaining it? Go on, chicken, so on, do it. Okay, look, I'll do my best. Broadly, it's the connection of any number of devices firing data centrally out of the device into the web, pretty much normally into the cloud. And it's happening all the time now. So when you're in your car driving along, you're on Google Maps and it knows that there's a traffic jam in front of you, it's because the location services of the people in the traffic jam in front of you are broadcasting it to Google, who can then play it back to you. When a friend of mine is really into his Fitbit, and he had the record for a particular run on the beach in Bali, and he saw that in his Fitbit that someone else had broadcasted into their group that the time had been beaten for his run on the beach in Bali. So he persuaded his family that that should be their holiday destination for the next year to go back and beat it again. But here's the frightening thing, is that the quantum of data and devices that is going to be connected to the internet, broadcasting data back into us, is absolutely colossal. And I think that this has massive ramifications for us, both as consumers, as people that are trying to understand their finances and insurances, but also as employers. And why I think that is because if you take something like people having Fitbit, and we saw in the harmonized proposition, people can connect their health applications in, it actually brings a really interesting scenario forward, which is people are starting to coalesce together in different groups which are not in employer verticals. So if you go to the US, for example, where the proliferation of Fitbits and other wearables is beyond where it is here, people are sourcing products together by virtue of the fact that they exist within those groups, rather than within their employer vertical. Now, that's a fascinating thing to consider, because what we're actually extolling here is that people that work for you might decide that they don't want to take benefit provision from you via the normal route. They'd like to get it themselves. And they'll argue, because I'll get a much better price than the one that you can give me. Now, as a concept, we might think that's okay. But the reality of that is, give something called anti-selection as well. Because if you take health, for example, and it's healthy people coalescing, somewhere there's a group of unhealthy people coalescing as well. And as an employer, that's going to be an incredibly difficult thing to be able to deal with going forwards. So let me just sort of conclude this piece by saying the journey from a pension dashboard to crowdsourcing employee benefits is a reasonably short one, and we're on the journey to it right now. And my question to all of you would be, as employers, would you be able to accommodate a world where you're allowing your employees to crowdsource benefits in groups that are no longer their employer vertical? Thank you.